My name is Pippa and I'm a lifelong theatre goer, and I also happen to be a disabled person, and since I acquired my chronic illness as a teenager, I've had to adapt my theatre going habits and try to find ways of still engaging with this thing that I love and that brings me a lot of happiness. If you found yourself watching this video, it might be because you found yourself on my blog and a blog post that I wrote years ago called How to Book Access Tickets as a Disabled Person. I wrote that a very long time ago, but to this day, that post has remained the most read post on my blog. If this is the first time we've become acquainted, to briefly introduce myself, my name is Pippa. I am in my late 20s and I live in Yorkshire. In a former life, I was involved in the theatre world in a very different way. I used to be training as a ballet dancer, I was in vocational training as a child, and even as that came to an end and even as my chronic illness symptoms started to impact my life, my love of theatre is something that has always remained a constant, and it's something that I don't ever see changing. No matter what happens in my life, I think the love of theatre will always be there. So first things first, what are access tickets? Access tickets is essentially a term that's used quite broadly to talk about theatre tickets that are specifically available to disabled people, and that can vary between different theatres and different companies. And the idea is that offering these tickets will make the process of going to the theatre a bit easier and a bit more of an equal experience for disabled people in comparison with non-disabled people. I would say the main reason that people go for access tickets is because you can get some amazing discounts, especially if you require a companion to go to the theatre. Again, this differs according to different venues, but it might be that in some venues you can purchase one ticket for yourself and get a free seat for a companion, so you're not having to pay for the cost of two seats just to bring somebody along, which is essential for your disability or your access needs. Other theatres don't offer the free seat, but they offer half-price tickets for both of the seats, so again you're still paying the same cost. Something amazing in a lot of West End theatres, if this is still the case, I believe it is that they have a standard rate for access tickets and companion tickets, which means that you will pay the same price for those tickets no matter where you sit in the theatre. And this is incredible because for me personally, this has meant that I can sit in the stalls for a West End production and yet pay the same cost as I might have paid for sitting in the dress circle. So you can get some really amazing discounts that not only accommodate your access needs, but reduce some of those extra costs that come with being a disabled person as well. So if that's something you're interested in, next we're going to talk about how you actually book access tickets and the 5 steps that will help you to do that. In typical form, I've just taken my microphone off and put the equipment away, but I forgot to say, if you found yourself on my blog or you're watching this video, unfortunately I can't book your access tickets for you. My website is not an access ticket booking service, but I hope the information I share in this video helps you to get in touch with the venue you want to visit and shows you how to contact them and get those tickets booked through them. So the first thing you're going to do is look for the performance that you want to see. It might be at your local theatre, it might be at a West End production, there might be a touring show, there might be an in-house production. But if you've seen something that you like the look of and you want to go and see, make a note of that production and look at the different dates and times of the performances. What you want to do is pick the date and time that you would most like to go and write that down, and also pick a few backup dates as well, because these are going to come in really handy when you get to the process of booking. At this stage, you might also want to look at the different seats that are available in that space. You can use websites like Seatplan to see an overview of the theatre and to click on different seats and you can see the view of the stage from those seats. If you use mobility aids or you have limited mobility, it might be best to pick parts of the venue where you can have step-free access to those particular seats and you're not necessarily having to do flights of stairs. If you have to fidget or stretch your legs, obviously sitting on an aisle might be better. Or if you might need to frequently get up and use the facilities, an aisle seat can also be better in those circumstances as well. So think about the space in the venue that would be most applicable and most comfortable for you. The next thing you're going to do is think about your personal access requirements and the adjustments that you might need in order to enjoy your trip to the theatre. This of course is going to be different for everybody, but it's worth making a note of these at this stage because you can discuss them with a staff member later if you choose to do so. If you're not sure about what your access needs are or what kind of adjustments might be available to you, bear with, we're going to get to those later. So you've chosen the performances you want to see, you've thought about your requirements, and the next thing you're going to do is contact your venue to book your tickets. Now there are a couple of ways you can do this. Usually the best thing to do is go onto the website of the theatre you want to go to. There will usually be an accessibility page. Most theatres have a tab that says your visit, and under there will be an accessibility page. On here you can generally find some more information about the accessibility of the venue and the different adjustments that the theatre might offer. There is usually a phone number and an email address. If these aren't accessible for you, there should be alternatives available like text phone. You can actually go into the theatre and speak to the box office if this is preferable to you. Generally speaking, because of my chronic illness symptoms, I try to avoid unnecessary phone calls, but in my experience, talking on the phone when booking theatre tickets can sometimes be the most energy efficient thing, because if there aren't access tickets available for the specific performance that you want to go to, there is sometimes a bit of back and forth required, and that can result in lots of emails back and forth sometimes. So I personally prefer talking on the phone, but you will know what communication style best suits you. Now, if you haven't booked access tickets before, it's worth knowing that some different venues have different access schemes. There will be some venues that you can ring up and you can literally just say, I'm a disabled person, can I book access tickets please? And bish bash bosh, it'll be done. You won't have to provide any evidence or jump through any hoops in order to do that. Sheffield Theatres, which is one of my local theatres, is actually really great in that sense. You don't have to go through any extra faff. If you say you're a disabled person, they will take that at face value and sort the stuff out for you. Other theatres, you might have to register for particular access schemes. You might have to jump through the hoops. You might have to provide evidence of your disability. One example of that is another theatre that's local to me, which is Bradford Alhambra. It's an incredible theatre, but for their access scheme, you do have to certify and you do have to provide evidence of your disability. I can understand why they ask for that, but in general, it's not really something that I love, especially because if you don't have the specific forms of evidence that they're asking for, you might have to provide a medical letter. And if you don't have that medical letter, it might be something that you have to pay for. So obviously that in itself can become a barrier for some people. But if you do self-certify in this way, it's usually the case that once you've done it once, you won't need to do it again. They'll set you up with an account, and then next time you want to book, they'll just refer to that account. So you only have to do it once, thankfully. But the reason I say that here is because if you're wanting to book access tickets for a show that's likely to sell out, it's worth thinking about whether you will need to have that access account set up in advance so that when the tickets go live, you can ring up and you can just book your tickets without having to do all of those extra steps first and perhaps worrying that tickets are going to sell out. So that was step 3, which was finding the contact details, and step 4 is actually having the conversation. So whether that's over the phone or over the email, you generally want to get in touch with the box office or the access line and say, hi, my name is this and I want to book access tickets for this performance on this day. From there, the staff member will take you through the different options that are available. They will ask where you want to sit. They will ask about your requirements, for example, whether you're a wheelchair user, whether there's somewhere in particular you want to sit. It's worth mentioning here actually that if you are a wheelchair user and you plan to stay in your wheelchair, there are a certain number of wheelchair spaces available in most venues, so you will need to specifically request the wheelchair space when you're booking. If you're an ambulatory wheelchair user like I am, it's up to you whether you want to stay in your wheelchair and book a wheelchair space or whether you want to transfer to a seat. If you do want to transfer, make sure you say that while you're booking. So you can say, I'm a wheelchair user, but I'd like to transfer to a seat, and would it be possible for somebody to keep my wheelchair somewhere safe while I'm enjoying the performance? If it's a manual wheelchair, it's usually the case that you can wheel right up to your seat and then a front of house member will take your wheelchair away. They might leave it in the cloakroom or with a staff member. I've always had really good experiences of doing this. It's always felt very safe and secure. If you're a power chair user, they might not necessarily have the authority to wheel that away, so you might have to think about that in advance. Again, because I can stand and walk for short periods, there have been occasions where I've taken my power chair and left it in a safe space and then I've walked to my seat, but obviously that won't be possible for everybody. It's just worth thinking about your different options is what I'm trying to say. So yes, you'll be able to get those tickets booked in with the box office team member. If you have any further questions or adjustments, now is a really good time to ask about them. Again, we will talk about some of those adjustments shortly. And yes, it's usually the case that you can pay over the phone and get it all sorted as well. If it is your first time booking access tickets for that venue, I would encourage you to set up an account so it's easier next time, and they will usually prompt you to do this while you're talking with them as well. And finally, step 5 isn't really a step, it's just to say that after that your booking will be confirmed. In the past they would have asked whether you wanted your tickets posted to you or whether you wanted to receive them digitally. Nowadays it's generally the only option you have is digitally. So please make sure you keep those tickets safe, because I know how easy it is for things to get lost in your email, so I would encourage you to download the tickets when they first arrive. Carefully check the date and time is what you expected, and from there you're all sorted and you can look forward to the performance. So next, let's talk about some of the adjustments that are actually available when you go to the theatre. Some of these will seem really obvious and some of them might be ones you might not have heard of before. And there also might be things that benefit you personally that I don't mention. And I will say that in general, front of house teams in theatre environments tend to be really warm and welcoming. So if there's something that you haven't seen before but that might help you to enjoy your trip, it's worth asking the question, because more often than not they will do what they can in their power to make that happen for you. That's one of the magical things about theatre. So like I said, the obvious one is wheelchair spaces. There will be a set number of wheelchair spaces according to the venue, and you have to make sure that you request these in advance. And also, like I said, if you're an ambulatory wheelchair user, it's up to you whether you want to stay in your wheelchair or transfer to a seat. You can transfer, and if it's a manual chair, the staff will take it away and keep it safe, and they will also bring it back to you during the interval and at the end of the performance as well, so don't worry, you're not going to be stranded. Lots of bigger theatre venues and lots of bigger productions run inclusive performances throughout the duration of their run. These can differ and they cater for different audiences. There are relaxed performances, which are great for people with learning disabilities and also people with sensory conditions as well. So during a relaxed performance, the house lights will usually be up a little bit so it won't be as dark. The lights and the sound effects in the production will be dimmed so they're not as overwhelming for somebody who struggles with that. And the audience vibe during these productions tends to be much more relaxed as well. So if somebody is making involuntary noises or has to regularly stand and move around, these things are a lot more accommodated and welcomed in these performances. I have been to relaxed performances as well, and while it is a very different experience, there is such a joy in seeing people enjoy theatre in a way that works for them. It really is something special. There may be captioned or BSL interpreted performances for people with hearing loss or hearing impairments. There may be audio described performances for somebody with visual impairments. Some productions offer touch tours before the performance starts, where people with visual impairments can go backstage and interact with the set and the costumes and gain more context of the show they're about to watch that can help them enjoy it even more. Some theatres are even starting to run dementia-friendly performances, which I think is so great. Again, Sheffield Theatres, I will say, is a front runner in this area. And I have been to one of the dementia-friendly performances as well because I was curious, and it was amazing. They had lots of the similar adjustments to a relaxed performance, but they also had more front of house staff ready to assist people. They had clear signage pointing out different things. And they just really put thought and care into thinking about how they can make that environment and that experience more accessible for somebody living with dementia and also their carers as well. If you have an assistance dog, you're of course permitted to take your assistance dog with you into the theatre. The dog can remain with you during the performance, especially if it's a medical detection dog. Or some theatres offer a dog sitting service, which means they will take care of your assistance dog while you're enjoying the performance. They'll make sure the dog has water, they'll keep the dog company. I'm not actually sure what happened with this, because I remember this was a really big deal a few years ago and then I've not really heard anything about it since, but perhaps that's just me because it doesn't affect me directly. But if you do have hearing loss or a hearing impairment, there are lots of theatres who were trialling headsets and infrared technology, and the idea being that somebody could enjoy an audio described performance that wasn't necessarily set up to be an audio described performance. So they could go to a typical performance, a typical production that isn't doing the BSL or the audio described on that day, but they would be able to have a headset that would describe that was happening. There are probably people who are more qualified to speak about that than me, but just to flag that that might be out there. If you're neurodivergent, or perhaps if you have a mental illness, or sometimes in the case of physical conditions as well, the idea of visiting a new space that you're not familiar with can seem really daunting, and that in itself can be an access barrier. Many theatres welcome people to visit in advance to get a better feel of the space and what they might expect. And a lot of theatres are trying to provide thorough information online now, whether that's a virtual tour of the space or a description of what happens when you walk in and what you can see and what you can expect. The idea that it would make that experience a little bit less daunting for somebody who was feeling nervous about it. And like I said, if there's something that I haven't mentioned here that you think might be helpful to you, it's always worth asking the question because you never know, and if it might help to make your experience better, then it's absolutely worth pursuing in my opinion. So those are the adjustments that the theatre might facilitate. There are also things I do in a personal capacity to make the process a little bit easier for me. There was a time in my chronic illness journey when I wasn't well enough to go to the theatre regularly, and I do find it quite energy draining now still. Totally worth the energy expenditure, but I have to prepare quite carefully for it and obviously leave in time to pace and rest and recover afterwards. I won't go too much into that here because I think this is turning out to be quite a long video, but some of the things that help me are I take earplugs in case it's going to be too loud. In the past I've been known to take sunglasses if it's flashy. Sometimes I try and look up content notes in advance to see how many special effects a production has and if I can anticipate them. If any of you have seen Jersey Boys, you will know that there's a moment in Jersey Boys in the first half that if you're not prepared for it will floor you, even if you don't have a chronic illness. I didn't know that was coming. I genuinely thought I was having a cardiac event when it happened. I personally usually still wear a face covering when I go to the theatre to protect myself and others. I have to drink a lot of water for my condition management, so I usually take my own water, but if you do need some, you can usually ask for tap water at the bar free of charge. Oh yeah, I take safe snacks so I don't get FOMO during the interval when they're serving the ice cream. I take allergen-friendly snacks. Parking spaces outside theatres can be notoriously difficult to find, so I would research these in advance, whether you have a blue badge or not. Research the parking spaces that are nearby. I'm sure there are more. I wear compression socks. I usually wear layers because sometimes theatres can be very heavily air conditioned, so I get cold and I feel the cold quite a lot, so I would advise taking layers just so you're better able to cater for whatever the temperature inside happens to be that day. Sunflower lanyard is what I forgot to say. If you have a less visible disability, sunflower lanyards are really well recognised in the theatre industry, so that might be something you find helpful. Right, I'm going to leave that there. I could talk about theatre all day, but if you weren't familiar with access tickets before, I really hope there's been something you can take away from this video. Yeah, the main take home, don't be afraid to ask for the things you need, especially if they're going to enable you to enjoy your visit. I also appreciate that going to the theatre isn't possible for every disabled person or every chronically ill person, and I feel so lucky that I'm able to do that at this stage in my journey. It's also worth saying that there is a lot of work that needs to be done in order to keep making the theatre industry more accessible for all. It's not a perfect solution yet, but with the theatre industry, probably more than any other, I really get the sense that they are trying and they do want to make it an inclusive space for everybody, and that is something I will always appreciate, and I will always champion that where I can. If you do have any theatre tickets booked at the moment, or if there are any productions that you're planning on booking for, I would love to hear about them in the comments below. I love a good stage chat. But I'll leave that there and say thank you so much as always for watching. You can subscribe if you want, and I'll see you next time.